Some pretty enormous reveals for the Black Templars today, a new Castellan character, new Primaris sword brethren, and a rather big upgrade sprue, including neophyte shotguns, a multi-melter repulsor, and a whole bunch of cool Black Templar relics. Let's take a look at what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're just taking a look through the new Black Templar reveals as Warhammer Community have just shown off to us. The Purgation launch box is out at the weekend, and they've guaranteed that everyone should be able to get their hands on it if they want to. And then it looks like a whole bunch of Black Templar releases are going to be following alongside the main individual release of the codex, probably around about 3 or 4 weeks after that. Let's go through them then. We'll talk about the character first, then the Sword Brethren squad, and then go on to that fairly juicy upgrade sprue. So first up, the new character is a Black Templar's Castellan. He's apparently their equivalent of a lieutenant, and of course it wouldn't be Games Workshop if we didn't have some sort of lieutenant release alongside a Space Marine army. Though to be honest, this guy is kind of cool as they go. Basically a classic bit of John Blanche artwork reimagined in new plastic. He's this guy off the front cover of the 3rd edition 40k rulebook, the artwork that's on the cover of the new Black Templars limited edition codex in the box. Unless I'm massively misinterpreting here, this looks like an example of a non-Primaris Space Marine for once. He's got the standard style old school Space Marine power pack, and a more traditional looking Space Marine helmet as opposed to the Mark X armour. He's quite a cool and flavourful little miniature, and in game it looks like he's going to be armed with a power axe and combi flamer. To be honest, probably not the most competitive of loadouts that you could pick for him, but certainly the combi flamer seems very appropriate for Black Templars. They do love their flame weapons. It'll be interesting to see whether this guy gets his own datasheet in the codex, or whether he just represents a standard Space Marine lieutenant. Models wise, I think it could go either way. If he does get his own unique datasheet, I wouldn't be too surprised if he's locked to the limited weapons that he has here. In any case, a cool little miniature. I quite like those creepy bone pauldrons that he's got on. He's definitely got more than enough skulls to signify himself as an Imperial miniature. Next up, we have the reveal of the Primaris Sword Brethren squad. These guys are almost certainly going to be a new datasheet within the Black Templar codex, and quite nice to have another Primaris melee option. It's quite nice to see an actual squad that looks kind of flexible, maybe a bit more akin to the old school Space Marine veterans, as opposed to the squads with only one loadout, say the Blade Guard veterans. I think they've done well with the models here. They do seem to be really quite similar in aesthetic to those Blade Guard, but obviously with a few Black Templar flourishes, such as their weapons being chained to their wrists, a few extra sensors, candles and reliquaries, and of course some sculpted Black Templar iconography on the shoulder pads. The model's armed with some very diverse weapons. We've got a power sword and combi plasma on the guy on the left, a chainsword and heavy bolt pistol on the central one, and a Primaris set of lightning claws on the one on the right. I don't think that we've seen any Primaris lightning claws so far, as opposed to the souped up ones that are on Kavan Shrike. They've only got the 3 blades as opposed to the 4 blades that the standard claws used to have. They perhaps do look a little bit more sleek to me. I guess the older ones did kind of look a bit power fisty. These look very much something different to power fists. In particular, those lightning claws on the pose that they are on the one on the right really does remind me of the current Sword Brethren kit. I think again with these guys they've really been trying to appeal to the nostalgia, a bunch of classic loadouts and basically very similar miniatures just reimagined in a new form. It looks like we'll be getting 5 of them in a box. Here are the last 2 full models that they've shown us, one armed with a Power Mace and Plasma Pistol, the other with a Power Axe and a Primaris Hand Flamer. It looks very similar in style to the Primaris Pyre Blaster. I wonder if this is going to have any sort of different rules to the standard Hand Flamer, maybe an extra AP-1 like the Pyre Blaster has. Finally, they've given us a few sneak peeks at a few of the other options on the squad. It's clear that we can arm at least one of them with a Thunder Hammer, and we can swap out another one to have the Heavy Bolt Pistol and Chainsword loadout if we want to. It's going to be interesting to see which way they play the datasheet. I'd hope that they're going to just make it as flexible as possible, maybe like the standard veteran one, allowing you to take as many of the power weapons as you want. But I really can't help but think we're going to wind up with something a bit more similar to the Plague Marines, or maybe the Orc Commandos, where perhaps they have a default loadout of Chainsword and Heavy Bolt Pistol, and then you might just be able to opt in to buy just one of the extra special weapons per squad. That could be a little bit more annoying with unit construction. I suspect we'd see people just lean to 1 or 2 of the extra options. In any case, it's really quite cool to see some standard issue Primaris with power weapons, and particularly to have some options and diversity in the unit. The Blade Guard are very cool and I really like the models, but it's just a tiny bit disappointing to have them all with basically the same loadout, and being forced to opt in to buy the Storm Shields, which makes for a bit of a different flavour of unit. I think for the battlefield role, the Sword Brethren definitely are going to be competing against the Blade Guard for which one's more efficient, and to be honest, Blade Guard are going to be quite a tough adversary to overcome. Having a storm shield is usually a great idea on any Space Marine units that can take it, and those power weapons are really quite nice and general purpose. Strength 5 and damage 2 is a really generalist loadout, and one that I think that these Primaris Sword Brethren might struggle to overcome. It's going to be interesting to weigh them up when we know all the options in the new Black Templar Codex, and particularly if there's any other surprises or special rules on the Sword Brethren datasheets. In particular though, I think that this could be a unit that really makes the Impulsor work. Like Blade Guard, they're slow moving and want to be getting into battle, and perhaps compared with Blade Guard, they won't have quite as good durability with those storm shields, so the Impulsor could have additional value for making them a little bit harder to take out. In any case, I'll certainly do a datasheet review for the unit once we have the details in full. Finally, last but not least, we have these Black Templar upgrades and transfers kits, a bit of a new style product that we haven't seen Games Workshop come out with something like this before. All the previous Primaris Space Marine upgrade kits, I'd argue, have been a little bit on the anemic side. A couple of head swaps, a few shoulder pauldrons, maybe a special weapon or power weapon if you're lucky. This one though seems far more generous and actually offers in some genuine war gear alternatives and some really quite cool depictions of the relics. It also helps confirm part of that leaked release schedule that we had seen, further strengthening its credibility, which basically leaked the entirety of this in full between the shotguns, multi-melter and relics. First up, we did talk about this when it was leaked last week, but basically the multi-melter looks like it goes on top of a repulsor or repulsor executioner. I'm going to guess it's usually going to be a 25-point upgrade, as the multi-melters often tend to be that for vehicles. I think it's quite cool to have an option, particularly such a bitey one as a multi-melter, but to be honest I don't think it's going to revolutionise the repulsor or the executioner. Their main problem certainly isn't that they aren't covered in enough guns, they have plenty of that going on, but more that they're just a bit expensive for what they do, and they aren't really all that hard to take out for the points that you invest in them. I think it's quite a fun and flavourful upgrade, maybe trying to make those tanks a bit more interesting for the Black Templars in the way that they've always had the same affinity with Land Raider Crusaders, but I'm not sure how interesting that's going to be competitively unless it's either ridiculously cheap or there's other rules attached. Next up, for the Primaris Neophyte shotguns, it appears that there's 4 of them in the kit, and also an extra bolter for a Neophyte. Currently it's hard to tell exactly what options are on the Primaris Crusader Squad kit. We know there's at least some options for the Neophytes. The Sprues were on show at one of Games Workshop's recent tournaments, but it is quite cool to know that you could arm them all with shotguns if you want to. I wonder if these are going to be either the standard Astartes shotgun profile or something new and Primarised up with more AP. The only minor gripe I might have with this is that these probably could have been included on the Crusader Squad sprue. Seems a bit weird to have a different war gear option packaged in this different box, and maybe just smacks a little bit of Games Workshop trying to encourage you to buy this if you want the different loadout. In general though, they're quite a nice extra to have if you were planning on picking up the big box and this anyway, and at this point who really knows whether shotguns are going to be the way that you want to arm them. We're going to have to weigh that up too. Of course there's also plenty of decorations here, loads of shoulder pads, plenty of spare heads, some Gravis armoured shoulder pads as well, and a whole bunch of things that you can strap onto vehicles like swords and stuff. But perhaps the other most interesting thing from the upgrade sprue is that they've actually given us some physical manifestations of the various Black Templar relics, the Sword of Judgment, the Aurelian Shroud, the Crusader's Helm, and the Skull of Cacodominus. All of these were present in the previous codex, and it's actually kind of cool to have them made in plastic. I'd hope that these would just be an optional extra that you could put on the miniature. I wouldn't like to have anyone enforcing them as mandatory that you have to have these, but they seem quite a nice flavour upgrade. I think that Sword of Judgment in particular looks thoroughly brutal, maybe kind of similar to the Judicia's Executioner Greatblade. There's also some transfers in here as well, so a nice bit of extra adornment for Black Templars kits. And we don't know how much this is going to cost yet. I'm going to guess just by the sheer amount of stuff that's here, it's going to be significantly more expensive than the other Primaris upgrade sprues. I believe they're generally around £9 or $15, though as I said you don't really get all that much for that price. I'd say if this is any less than double that, we'd be very lucky. So let me know what you think of all these big new reveals then. Quite a good day to be a Black Templar all in all, and it seems that the release for them is really quite a big one. I look at this as maybe the pattern that we'll see for refreshed armies such as Blood Angels, Space Wolves and Dark Angels. Multiple squads of their specialised infantry and characters, all dropping at once alongside a meaty upgrade sprue. I'll most certainly cover any other news of the Black Templars on the channel, so feel free to stay tuned if you'd like to see more. Hopefully we'll be able to get a codex review in the next week or two. Finally, if you have been enjoying these videos and you'd like to help keep them coming, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page, which you can find down in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happens next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. I'm hoping that the Purgation box should be available in the next one. In any case, if any of that sounds interesting or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description below. A massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.